No one in that room anticipated Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett to take such a bold stand. But on live television, with millions watching, she called out the facade surrounding Melania Knauss's marriage to Donald Trump. The moment her words pierced the air, everything changed. Within hours, Trump was raging at his aides, threatening censure, demanding silence. But it was too late. Jasmine hadn't just spoken. She'd struck a chord that resonated far beyond the chamber. Her words were a spark, igniting a truth the nation had been avoiding for too long. It was nearly midnight in Washington, D.C. The chamber was half empty, filled only with the faint hum of low conversations and the rustle of papers. Most Americans were asleep or too weary to care about another late-night political hearing broadcast on C-SPAN. But in Texas, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett sat upright, alert, measured, ready. She hadn't planned to speak again that night, but when Representative Thomas Varnell from Nebraska interrupted her, chuckling, dismissing her like she was an inconsequential novice, something ignited within her. She sat still for a moment, eyes fixed forward, before her microphone clicked on. "I'm not finished," she said, her voice steady, sharp, cutting through the room's lethargy. Varnell tried to interject, but Jasmine pressed on. "You want to preach about family values?" she asked, turning slightly toward the chairman. "You want to lecture this country on leadership, loyalty, and strong marriages?" The room shifted. Eyes lifted from phones. Someone leaned forward in their seat. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "Then let's talk about the silence we keep ignoring at the very top," she continued, pausing just long enough for her words to settle. "Tell me, when was the last time we saw the First Lady smile beside the President without a camera forcing it?" The silence in the room cracked like thin ice. Jasmine leaned in slightly. "You want America to believe in a picture-perfect marriage, but the First Lady's ring hasn't seen daylight in weeks, and everybody knows it." Gasps rippled through the room. A few smirks appeared. Someone in the back coughed, though it sounded suspiciously like a stifled laugh. Chairman Leonard Hayes reached for his gavel, hesitating, unsure whether to slam it or let her continue. "You can't parade your wife's image and then act shocked when someone calls it what it is," Jasmine added, her tone unwavering. "A performance, and a poor one." Varnell's face flushed red. Hayes tapped the gavel once, softly, uncertainly. "That's enough, Congresswoman," he said, but there was no force behind it. Jasmine wasn't yelling. She wasn't throwing accusations wildly. She was making a point, and everyone in that room felt its weight. Her aides exchanged glances. The stenographer paused briefly before her fingers raced to catch up. No one had expected this. Not from Jasmine Crockett. Not like this. There was no immediate retort from the Trump-aligned members. Just the sound of shuffling papers, uneasy shifting in seats, and the heavy quiet that follows a truth too sharp to dismiss. The C-SPAN cameras captured every second. The moment lasted less than 2 minutes, but it was the kind of clip that spreads like wildfire, raw, unembellished, needing no dramatic music or editing to make its impact. Within 15 minutes, the clip was trending online, racking up 10,000 retweets. By 2 a.m., Melania Missing was climbing the charts. Jasmine's words were everywhere: Reddit threads, Instagram reels, TikTok breakdowns. Some called her out, accusing her of crossing a line. One post read, "Dragging the First Lady into political fights is low." But others, especially women, heard something deeper. They heard the crack in a polished veneer that had never been entirely convincing. It wasn't about Melania, not really. It was about silence, about power, about how women, even those in the White House, can vanish quietly in plain sight. Jasmine hadn't said all that aloud. She didn't need to. By sunrise, the White House issued a terse statement condemning inappropriate personal attacks. It felt like it was written through gritted teeth, but Jasmine's words couldn't be undone. They were out in the world, doing their work, because sometimes one sentence is enough to shatter an illusion. The clip didn't just spread, it exploded. By mid-morning, Jasmine Crockett's face was everywhere. Not smiling, not shouting, just resolute behind that congressional microphone, her tone so steady it sent chills. The internet isn't built for nuance, but this moment demanded attention. On Twitter, her quote was shared by 6 major political accounts before dawn. One captioned simply, "She said what we've all been thinking." It passed 100,000 likes in 2 hours. On TikTok, creators stitched themselves alongside the clip. A woman in Houston, pausing during her lunch break at a diner, watched it, shook her head, and whispered she didn't lie. Another video featured a therapist in Atlanta talking about public dissociation, about how some women live in gilded cages, their knocks for help unheard. Morning shows jumped on it, tossing around words like outspoken, controversial, and divisive. By noon, Jasmine was fielding invitations for late-night interviews, podcasts, and panel discussions. CNN framed her words as a risky personal attack. MSNBC called it a rare moment of raw honesty. Fox News looped the clip alongside old footage of Melania waving beside Trump, her expression blank. It was hard to tell what captivated people more, Jasmine's audacity or Melania's silence. One post hit especially hard, a side-by-side image of Melania looking away from Trump during a past event and Jasmine speaking the night before. The caption read, "Women know," and they did. Because it wasn't just about the First Lady. It was about every woman who had ever smiled when she didn't want to, stood beside a man because it was expected, not because it felt safe. Every woman expected to be silent, poised, perfect, no matter what happened behind closed doors. In Seattle, a college student named Lila hosted a 3-hour live stream discussing the meaning of public image in relationships. In Dallas, a former campaign volunteer recalled seeing Melania sitting alone at a fundraiser, quiet, as if waiting for the event to end. Some scoffed, posting, "You don't know their marriage. It's none of your business." But even that couldn't slow the momentum. It wasn't just a marriage anymore. It had become a symbol, and symbols don't get privacy. Donations to Jasmine's campaign tripled overnight. A volunteer from Austin said she'd never felt so moved by a politician. She said something risky. That means something, but the backlash was brewing too. Trump's loyal supporters flooded message boards, calling for Jasmine's censure. A video surfaced of a man in Georgia burning a poster of her campaign flyer, muttering about her overstepping. A conservative radio host labeled her a disgrace, accusing her of attacking Melania for clout. But every attempt to drag her name only amplified her voice. Behind the scenes, Jasmine stayed calm. She tweeted once the next morning, "When you speak the truth, expect people to flinch." She didn't mention Trump or Melania again. She didn't need to. The country was having the conversation now, and it was bigger than her words. Even conservative voters quietly, anonymously began to voice doubts. "I supported Trump, but she's right. Melania hasn't looked happy in a long time," one wrote. It was as if a light had been flicked on in a room people had pretended not to notice. Inside the White House, Trump was unraveling. The West Wing was a pressure cooker. By 8 a.m. phones rang incessantly. Aides whispered in hallways. 2 interns were tasked with tracking every trending keyword tied to Jasmine Crockett's name. It wasn't just a quote anymore. It was a movement, and Trump hated movements he couldn't control. He paced the private dining room off the Oval Office, his face red, a half-eaten bagel discarded on a plate. "She called my wife a prop." He snapped at his chief of staff, Marcus Reed. "You don't let that happen." "You hit back." "She didn't say prop, sir," Reed replied carefully. "She asked a question. Publicly. That's different. She said my wife doesn't wear her ring." Trump shouted, slamming his hand on the table. "Who does she think she is?" Reed opened his mouth but thought better of it. He knew the look. Trump didn't want reason. He wanted action. "Draft a response," Trump ordered. "Call her reckless. Call her anything. Make this go away." But it wasn't going away. By the time the communications team reached their desks, they were already playing catch-up. One staffer, a recent hire, suggested releasing new photos of Trump and Melania together. Something warm, candid. The idea was shot down instantly. "She's not doing that," Reed said flatly. "What do you mean?" another aide asked. "She's not doing photos," Reed repeated. "She's not speaking. She's not responding." The silence hit the room like a weight. Melania had refused any public reaction. No statement, no tweet, no staged appearance. Trump had tried that morning, storming into the East Wing unannounced. Melania's assistant blocked him at the door, but he pushed past. "She needs to come out with me," he said. "Just stand there and smile." 2 minutes. The door stayed closed. She didn't emerge. A text from her team followed. "The First Lady is not available at this time." That was all. Trump stormed back to the Oval Office, shouting about loyalty and betrayal, furious that this congresswoman thinks she can ruin a marriage with one sentence. But it wasn't about a sentence anymore. The tension in the White House was seeping into everything. Staffers whispered about how rarely they saw Melania, how she used to make brief appearances in the Rose Garden or wave in the press corridor. But now, nothing. An aide in her 60s, a veteran of multiple administrations, said quietly, "This feels different, like she's already gone." Meanwhile, Reid and the legal team debated how to shift the spotlight off Jasmine. They drafted a letter to the House Ethics Committee, suggesting censure for personal and targeted attacks. The language felt flimsy, even to them. "It reads like a tantrum," one lawyer muttered. Trump didn't care. He signed it with a bold flourish and told Reid to leak it to the press. "Make it sound like she's done for," he said. But something was different this time. Every time Trump struck out, it made Jasmine seem more composed, more principled. The harder he pushed, the more dignified she looked. And worse, Melania still wasn't cooperating. That afternoon, a photo surfaced online. Melania leaving a side entrance of the residence. No ring, no staff, just sunglasses and a neutral expression. Snapped by a delivery driver and posted to Reddit, it exploded online. "She's not even pretending anymore," the caption read. Inside the West Wing, Trump slammed the door to the Roosevelt Room so hard a framed photo tilted. He called his daughter 3 times in an hour. She didn't answer. The unraveling wasn't just public, it was inside the walls. And Jasmine Crockett? She hadn't posted again. Just one image on her Instagram story. Black background, white text. Truth doesn't need to shout. But no press statement could stop what came next. The question started as a whisper, soft and almost casual. "Is she okay?" But within 48 hours, it grew into something unstoppable. Not just a question, but a movement. It appeared first in comment sections, under videos, in posts from suburban parents and old classmates who rarely touch politics. Some weren't even fans of Jasmine Crockett. They just paused and asked, "Wait, has anyone actually seen her lately?" The more people looked, the stranger it felt. Melania Knauss's last full public appearance was 6 weeks prior, a White House event with school children from Virginia. Even then, she hadn't spoken, just offered a stiff smile for a photo, standing a clear 2 feet from Donald Trump. No speeches, no holiday messages, not even a repost of her usual cherry blossoms for spring. Where she once appeared polished, distant, now she was simply absent. People started digging. Old clips resurfaced, ones that had been posted and forgotten. A moment at a charity gala where Trump reached for her hand and she shifted away, subtle but unmistakable when slowed down, or footage from state dinner where she arrived 10 steps ahead, never pausing, never glancing back. Body language analysts flooded the internet. Some claims were absurd, but others made you stop and think. "She's speaking through silence," one former profiler said on a podcast. That's how women in her position survive power. They go quiet, but not small. Then came the former staffers, only a few, anonymous but enough. Their words echoed. "She's not part of the plan anymore. She's a backdrop. She keeps her own schedule, doesn't ask permission. Honestly, I think she's done." That phrase, "she's done," caught fire. Talk shows ran segments titled, "Has Melania Knauss checked out?" It became a trending search. Editors raced to publish op-eds before the moment faded. A clip from a morning show went viral when a host leaned back and said, "This isn't about Jasmine anymore. She just broke the glass, and now we're seeing something we weren't meant to notice." By now, "Is Melania okay?" wasn't just a hashtag. It was co-opted by brands trying to stay relevant. A fashion retailer posted a meme. "She might not be okay, but her wardrobe's still flawless. It drew backlash, but stayed up. Even high school debate teams used the incident as a case study. The question had become a national prompt. Still, Melania said nothing. No statement, no denial, no subtle tweet. Her official accounts were silent, and that silence amplified everything. People emailed reporters with unconfirmed sightings at a boutique in Arlington, a coffee shop near Bethesda, leaving a yoga studio in Alexandria. Each added to the myth. The White House tried to pivot, announcing a new literacy program in Ohio, but no one cared. They wanted answers about Melania, and the problem for Trump was that every headline about her was indirectly about him. The longer she stayed quiet, the louder the conversation grew, and the more she became a symbol of something trapped, something ignored, something tired of pretending. Jasmine Crockett's words had lit the spark, but Melania's silence fanned the flames. In Baltimore, a group of women held a silent rally outside City Hall, holding signs that read, "You don't have to smile, and silence is a voice too." Hundreds showed up, no speeches, just presence. Even those who avoided politics felt it, something bigger than a marriage, bigger than a presidency. It was about the cost of performance, the weight of pretending in public. Meanwhile, Jasmine didn't flinch. As headlines swirled and the internet spun theories about Melania's absence, she got up, showered, slipped on a navy blazer, and walked into the studio of Morning Pulse in D.C. The producer handed her a mic, whispering, "You've got 6 minutes, Liv. They'll ask about it." Jasmine nodded and sat across from host Nora Tate, a sharp journalist from Richmond known for cutting through fluff. "Congresswoman," Nora began as the live feed kicked in, "some call your remarks personal, reckless, even harmful. What do you say to that?" Jasmine didn't blink. "I said what I saw," she replied, her voice calm, unwavering. "And a lot of people saw it too. They just didn't say it out loud." Nora leaned forward. "Are you suggesting the First Lady is, what, trapped?" Jasmine gave a short breath, not a laugh, just a pause to show she saw the trap in the question. "I'm not suggesting anything," she said, steady as ever. "I'm pointing out what women across this country have been whispering about for years. The performance of happiness, the expectation to smile, stand still, and look perfect next to men who don't respect us." The room felt colder, heavier. "You want to know what's harmful? Telling women to stay quiet because powerful men feel embarrassed. That's harmful." The clip hit 2.8 million views in 10 hours. By evening, Jasmine was trending again. Not for a viral jab, but for something rarer, conviction. She wasn't backtracking, wasn't softening her words. She stood firm, and the public felt it. In Charlotte, a teacher named Mara filmed herself watching the interview, pausing to say, "I'm not political, but this woman just said what I've lived." Her video got thousands of shares. Support poured in, activists, professors, even a few Republican women sending private messages, careful not to risk public backlash. Jasmine's campaign saw donations spike, small sums flooding in, $15, $8, one with a note, for every woman who smiled through it. Not everyone cheered. A group of House Republicans held a press conference in a drab meeting room, demanding an apology. A congressman from Wyoming said, "We don't drag families into political fights. It's beneath us." Jasmine responded with a short video from her home office. No makeup, sweatshirt, laptop camera slightly off-center. "You brought families into politics when you used them for photo ops, when you hid behind them to push policies that hurt us," she said. "So no, I won't apologize. I don't owe decorum to people who protect lies." It was raw, unscripted, and it landed. Her Instagram comments filled with women sharing stories. Fake smiles at family dinners, staying for appearances, lying when asked, "Is everything okay?" Jasmine had cracked something open, not just political but personal. That week, she was invited to 2 talk shows, a podcast, and 4 university panels. She accepted them all but kept her message tight. We silence women in quiet ways, through expectation, through pressure, through image. We call it respectability, but it never saved anyone. Her voice wasn't angry, wasn't bitter. It was certain, and that certainty unnerved the right people. The backlash grew sharper. A conservative blog in Jacksonville posted a vague claim that Jasmine had once attended a divisive community event in her district. No evidence, just innuendo. By Thursday, it was picked up by right-wing networks, twisted into a narrative of her being radical. A slick 90-second video circulated on social media, splicing clips of Jasmine speaking passionately in past hearings with images of protests and a voiceover warning about disruptors in Congress. It ended with bold text. "She's not here to unite. She's here to divide." It screamed dark money funding, polished and fear-driven. Jasmine saw it and muttered, "Cheap and lazy," forwarding it to her comms director with a note. "Let them waste their money. We'll keep telling the truth." But she wasn't naive. She knew what was coming. By Friday, her Dallas office received over 100 calls, half threats or slurs. A young volunteer, a college freshman named Eli, answered 6 in a row, each ending with heavy breathing or shouted insults before the line went dead. On Saturday, a truck circled her neighborhood, blaring audio from the smear ad. Neighbors called the police. The driver claimed free speech and drove off. At a town hall in Houston on Sunday, Jasmine stood before a packed community center, folding chairs spilling into the aisles. "They're not scared because I lied," she said, her voice steady, resonant. "They're scared because I told the truth." The crowd roared, but her team was stretched thin, handling security, dodging loaded questions from reporters, countering local outlets, spinning stories that she'd gone too far. A former campaign aide-turned-commentator claimed Jasmine was obsessed with Melania, projecting her own personal failures. The attack was weak, but it was meant to distract, to drown her words in noise. Through it all, Jasmine stayed steady. Over breakfast at a small diner in Plano, her mother reached across the table, passed their shared plate of waffles, and took her hand. 2 men at the next table whispered, pointing. Jasmine ignored them. "You okay?" her mom asked. "I'm tired," Jasmine said, exhaling. "But I'm not wrong." That was enough. Back at her office, her team pushed back on 3 new smear pieces. 2 about her law school days, one twisting a photo from a charity event into something scandalous. They were busy but not overwhelmed. This wasn't the first time the system had tried to bury a woman who spoke truth. It just wasn't working like it used to. Others began to speak up. It started with Congresswoman Sarah Linden from Nevada, a quiet figure who rarely made waves. During a routine Housing Committee hearing, she paused, looked at the camera, and said, "I may not agree with everything Jasmine Crockett says, but she's right about one thing. We've all been told to smile and stay still. I'm done with that." The room froze. No one interrupted. By day's end, 3 more congresswomen from Colorado, Maryland, and Missouri echoed her, not quoting Jasmine directly, but naming the same unspoken script. One shared how she'd been told to wear softer colors early in her career. Another admitted her campaign team warned her against mentioning her single motherhood to avoid looking unstable. Outside Congress, the response was stronger. A former First Lady, not Melania, but one who'd spent years in the White House, posted a cryptic message. Sometimes silence isn't a choice. It's survival. No names, no tags, but it spread like wildfire. In Houston, a retired prosecutor gave a local news interview, reflecting on her career and how, even in a courtroom, she'd been told to tone down her passion. "Jasmine gave us permission to stop pretending," she said, her smile weary but real. Then came the letters, thousands of emails, handwritten notes, social media messages flooding Jasmine's office. From nurses, teachers, office workers, mothers. Stories of silent kitchens, boardrooms, marriages. A woman from Richmond wrote, "You put words to something I never thought I could say without being called bitter. Thank you." It wasn't about Melania anymore, not really. It was about women, their voices, their absences, their instincts suppressed for too long. The movement grew. Universities reworked lectures to discuss public image and gender. Journalism students analyzed coverage of political spouses across decades, asking, Why do we only notice them when they stop smiling? A new hashtag emerged, seen and silent. It wasn't loud or aggressive. It was reflective. People posted photos of themselves from moments when they were visible but unheard. Weddings, meetings, family photos where their smiles hid something heavier. It was cathartic. Women weren't shouting. They were remembering, connecting. Even some men spoke up, not to take center stage, but to acknowledge what they'd ignored. "I thought my mom was just dramatic," one wrote under Jasmine's post. "Now I think I need to call her." The momentum didn't follow polls or wait for approval. It built itself. When asked if she was surprised by the wave she created, Jasmine said simply, "I didn't create it. I just lit the match." The fire was already there. Melania Knauss remained silent through it all. For weeks, she offered no statement, no rebuttal, no carefully worded tweet. Her silence was louder than any speech, amplifying the questions swirling around her. When a reporter from a major network spotted her in a brief hallway glimpse at the White House and shouted, "Mrs. Knauss, do you have a response to Congresswoman Crockett?" she didn't flinch. The video showed her walking past in a cream-colored coat, eyes hidden behind large sunglasses, her face unreadable. That 6-second clip trended for 3 days straight. Pundits dissected her posture, the slight tightness of her lips, the measured pace of her steps. Experts flooded cable news with talk of nonverbal messaging. It bordered on absurd, but beneath the noise, people were reading between lines she never spoke aloud. Then came the photo. It wasn't staged, not an official portrait. A woman named Clara Benson, a teacher grabbing coffee at a mall in Fairfax, Virginia, saw someone who looked like Melania. She snapped a quick picture and posted it online with a simple caption. "Is this her?" No security, no ring. The image went viral. Melania was alone, dressed simply in a gray sweater and flat shoes, her hair pulled back, sunglasses resting on her head. Her left hand was bare, no trace of the sparkling ring that once caught camera flashes from across a room. No one could confirm it was her, but it didn't matter. People believed it, and that belief carried weight. The photo became a symbol. Art students sketched it. Activists printed it on posters. Blogs ran headlines like "The Ring That Disappeared" and "What Her Silence Says." The symbolism outgrew the reality. The White House stayed quiet. When pressed, the press secretary dodged, muttering about personal family matters. Inside the West Wing, the silence was driving Donald Trump to the edge. Staffers whispered he was more erratic than usual. One morning, he skipped a call with a foreign ambassador, too consumed with what he called this mess. Another day, he stormed out of a briefing after someone mentioned Jasmine Crockett's name. He wanted control, but control required Melania's cooperation, and she wasn't giving it. His daughter tried calling twice, suggesting a simple photo op, just the two of them, smiling, no words needed. Melania didn't respond. An aide, speaking anonymously, told a journalist he can't make her do anything anymore. Not photos, not events, not a single wave. In one tense meeting, Trump muttered, "She's doing this on purpose." No one answered. The silence was haunting him. Speculation grew wilder. Was there a fight? Was she living separately? Was the marriage a shell? The truth didn't matter as much as the uncertainty. Melania's refusal to perform, to smile, to stand beside him, to post a curated image, was a statement in itself. Women noticed. They'd been told to smile through discomfort, to hold a partner's hand for appearances, to stay quiet to avoid questions. Melania wasn't doing any of it, and that was deafening. Comedians wove it into their routines. "She's the quietest first lady ever," one quipped, but she's saying more than most without opening her mouth. Even Jasmine Crockett stayed measured. At a community roundtable in Atlanta, when asked about Melania, she smiled softly and said, "It was never about her. It was about what we all pretend not to see." That line landed everywhere. Newspapers, social media, even protest signs at a women's march in Raleigh. The silence grew, but so did its power. Inside the White House, the tension boiled over. 3 weeks after Jasmine's statement, a veterans event was held in Richmond. It was meant to be a reset. Patriotism, Unity, a chance to shift the narrative. Trump took the stage, red tie crisp, speech in hand. Melania's name was on the program, a chair reserved beside him. But when he stepped to the podium, the seat was empty. He barely acknowledged it, saying only, "Melania sends her best," before moving on. The press pounced. Photos of the vacant chair flooded news sites. The empty seat beside Trump became the headline of the day. Anchors speculated. Was she refusing appearances? Had she left D.C.? The White House offered weak excuses about scheduling conflicts, but no one bought it. That night, a grainy video leaked from inside the residence. No sound, just Melania walking down a hallway, holding a book, her face thoughtful, lips pressed together. The source claimed it was filmed days before the Richmond event. The caption read, "She's here, just not with him." It hit like a bombshell. The phrase became a headline, a meme, a rallying cry. It felt bigger than gossip. It felt like truth. Jasmine, meanwhile, was back in D.C., preparing for a hearing on public trust in media. The irony wasn't lost on her. "You're trending again," her aide said, showing her a phone. Jasmine glanced at the screen. Her latest quote was everywhere. "When women vanish from a story, it's rarely by choice." It had slipped out during a recent radio interview when asked if she felt responsible for the firestorm. "I didn't start the fire," she'd said. "I just stopped ignoring the smoke." That line was now on posters, shared by influencers quoted in classrooms. Invitations board in OPES, TV panels, speaking engagements. She kept her focus on her work. At the hearing, she opened her notes, cleared her throat, and faced the panel. "We are trapped by appearances," she began, her voice steady, deliberate. "In politics, in media, in relationships, in public life, we prize the image of calm over the courage to speak. We're told strong women are dangerous, that silence is safer. But silence changes nothing, and speaking makes you a target." Behind her, Congresswoman Elena Harper, who had stayed quiet during the initial uproar, leaned forward, nodding. After the hearing, Elena caught Jasmine in the hallway. "I should have spoken up sooner," she said. "You're right. It's exhausting to pretend." Jasmine walked out to a cluster of reporters. One asked, "Do you think the First Lady should speak out?" She paused, looked at the camera, and said, "She doesn't owe us anything. But she also doesn't owe anyone silence." The clip was short but sharp, trending by evening under hashtags like her own voice. It wasn't about defending Melania or attacking anyone. It was about choice, about the right to be seen or unseen on your own terms. Back at the White House, the air was thick with frustration. Trump floated cutting Melania from an upcoming holiday event entirely. "If she's going to disappear, she doesn't need the spotlight," he snapped. But Melania wasn't disappearing. She was refusing the stage. For the first time, it didn't feel like defiance. It felt like power. By the fourth week, the conversation had shifted entirely. It wasn't about a scandal or even Melania anymore. It was a reckoning. Jasmine hadn't spoken about the First Lady since that radio interview, but her silence made her presence louder. She arrived in Austin for a women's leadership conference, wearing a simple black dress, no dramatic flair. The auditorium was packed. Not a campaign rally, just her and a microphone. She stepped on stage to a standing ovation, not for being viral, but for standing firm. When the crowd settled, she smiled just enough. "I never meant to start a fire," she said, her voice warm but steady. "I just stopped pretending I didn't see the smoke." The room exhaled, the line now a familiar refrain. This country runs on images, on performance, on pretending everything's fine when it isn't. I said one sentence about a woman's ring, and the world saw through it. Not because it was about jewelry, not because it was about her, it was about us. How many of us have stood next to someone, pretending, when everything inside screamed otherwise? Heads nodded. A woman in the second row dabbed her eyes. "You know what scared them?" Jasmine asked, pausing. "Not what I said, but that people listened. Because when people listen, you can't control them anymore." That moment made headlines, not for flash, but for its weight. Editorials called her speech poised, piercing, personal. News anchors replayed it like a national meditation. A school in Dallas pinned her quote to its bulletin board. You don't owe anyone your silence. Not your family, not your job, not your country. In D.C., the White House stayed quiet. No new appearances from Melania, no statements, no stage photos. Her absence was now part of the story, and Jasmine's refusal to back down was the other half. The movement grew legs. In Atlanta, a panel called The Price of Pretending sold out, with speakers from psychologists to community leaders reflecting on the energy spent maintaining illusions. A playwright in Philadelphia started a play titled The Empty Chair, inspired by Melania's absence in Richmond. A college in Texas launched a scholarship in Jasmine's name for students showing fearless integrity. She was surprised. She hadn't set out to be a symbol. She was just telling the truth. When asked about the fallout on a national talk show, Jasmine shrugged gently. Sometimes you say something and it fades. Sometimes it echoes. This one echoed. Support for her grew beyond her district. She wasn't a trending topic anymore. She was a voice people turned to, not for shouting, but for standing steady. Something shifted in homes across the country. People started asking new questions. Why do we expect women to shield men's reputations at their own expense? Why do we call silence politeness? Why do we only hear the truth when the damage is visible? Jasmine hadn't given answers. She'd given people the courage to ask, and that was more powerful than any headline. Melania never spoke. She didn't need to. Her silence said enough. Jasmine never spoke for her again. She'd made her point, and the country heard it. The conversation had grown beyond them both, into something raw, real, and unstoppable. It was about truth, about the cost of pretending, and about the power of a single voice to break the silence. If this story moved you, if it made you think or feel, don't let it end here. Share it. Talk about it. Ask the hard questions. The truth is waiting.